News Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brandon Noel, give me the rock. Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 472 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome to the Jardy Basement. I'm sitting here. It's just past 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and we've got some news to talk about and some kudos to pass out. It's the transfer portal is open. It's technically a dead period as far as recruiting goes. That will all change very shortly, but that has not stopped players from entering the portal. That has not really slowed the process down a whole lot. And Ohio State landed a commitment. We're going to hear from Wright State's Brandon Noel here shortly. Noel committed to Ohio State, signed all his paperwork and everything on Monday. The commitment was announced on Tuesday. And so we're gonna dive into that. The other roster news, as such as it was officially announced, is that Devin Royal put it out there that he will be back at Ohio State for his junior season. That announcement came late last week. Might have been Saturday. Time is irrelevant. At any rate, he made a public announcement that he will be returning to Ohio State for his third season. And so I have some thoughts on that and just some general roster updates as well. And before we get to those things, like I said, we have some kudos to pass out. So I want to thank everyone who joined the Beat the Beat Writer podcast this year. Always enjoy running that and seeing how poorly I do year after year. And that was, no different this year. And we have a champion to crown. So I want to send my sincerest congratulations to Dave L. And Dave put in his username, Dave parentheses, chances are, and then in all caps, NIL. So Dave, I'm not sure if you meant chances are nil or chances are name, image, and likeness, because at this point I see NIL and that's where my brain goes. But either way, Dave nailed the Final Four and the champion, edging out a second bracket that was submitted by my boss, Brian White. But Brian, I wouldn't have counted that one anyway, because I think if you enter more than one bracket, you're cheating. So Dave won. In my family, my 7-year-old Owen, he finished 43rd. The Duke loss took all the Jardys out. We all had Duke winning it all. That was a tough deal there on Saturday night. Difficult one to see go down, but Owen finished 43rd, and I was 131st. So not my finest year. And so Dave, this is your public invitation to join the podcast. I'll email you shortly as well, but hopefully we can get you on here and we can talk about the tournament and your strategy and anything else, honestly, that you feel like talking about. So we'll hopefully get in touch here real soon and get something set up. Last night was the national championship game, and one of the things that really struck me watching that was it reminded me of watching the Duke-Houston game, where it wasn't until about 20 seconds were left in that Duke-Houston game where I thought to myself, Duke might actually lose this. I just thought, okay, they're up 14. They've got this. And then you jump ahead to Monday night, and Houston, which is just tough as all get out, is up 12 in the second half. And I think that was the point where I tweeted something to the effect of, how good is Duke if they were up 14 on this team? I mean, clearly Houston's better because they won the game, but just Houston just looked so dominant and in control, and then suddenly it was not. I think the stat was the Cougars had 5 turnovers in the first 38 minutes and 29 seconds of the game, had 5 turnovers at that point, and then 4 in the last minute 31. You know, to have your last 4 possessions of the national championship game all end in turnovers is just brutal. And all credit to Florida's defense and the way the Gators found a way to out Houston. But that was a compelling watch, and that was just a devastating loss for Houston. Like, also a reminder this weekend that and no lead is really safe in college basketball, is it? I mean, if Duke is up 14 in the second half in the Final Four and can lose, and if Houston's up 12 in the second half of the title game and lose, like, what lead is safe in college basketball? It's pretty wild. Had a lot of fun watching that Final Four, watching that title game. Hopefully you enjoyed those experiences as well. 363 days until next year's national championship season. Well, by the time you hear this, 362, I believe, is the countdown. So don't be the person that somebody immediately replied to me when I pointed that out and said something like, Ohio State's not going to be playing in the national championship next year. Only 2 teams will be. That statement is true for literally 361 teams in Division I basketball. Let's just enjoy the fact that it's the off season. We get a chance to catch our breath, and we just had a great tournament, and we're going to have another one next year, and we'll see if Ohio State's in it. A couple of moves here recently that I think will have a big impact on whether the Buckeyes can get back in there. So we're going to get into all that here in just a second. Before we do, I want to remind you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you like to enjoy your podcasts. If you subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review. Please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks everyone that's taken the time to do all those things. I might go a little outside the box this summer and do some interview episodes with people that haven't been on here before, and just some different voices. Like I've had quite a people point out we got to get Patrick Flaherty on here. So Patrick, one of these days I'm coming into that studio, and we're gonna sit down, and you're gonna tell everyone how you've held my hand through 472 episodes of this thing, and we'll talk about all the stuff that goes into making this happen. I think that would be a fun episode to do in the summer. Honestly, Owen making a run at the title makes me wonder how much fun it might be to just have him on the podcast anyway, which kind of got us all thinking, like, what if we had a Jardy family podcast and you guys could all hear from my wife and my kids about what it's like to go through the season, and what it's like to deal with me, and all those kinds of things. If these are ideas that you're interested in, or if you think this would be a fun listen, because really that's what it's about. I want you to enjoy listening to this. I want this podcast to be about all of you and what you find entertaining. So if we hit like July and we need some off the wall conversations, and if you think it'd be fun to hear from my family, let me know. It's something I'm one of the things I'm kicking around here for the coming months. Right now, we're not really married to any sort of routine at this point. It's very much just, well, we'll see when there's news, and we'll podcast. Like, there's no guarantee this is the only podcast we'll do this week. But once I got the news that Brandon Noel was committing, and then the news that the commitment was coming on Tuesday afternoon, just made the most sense to hold off and talk about Devin and talk about Brandon on the same podcast. So let's start off here with Devin. That's that came first, chronologically, and just like the notion of retention, and how much Ohio State clearly put an emphasis on that in this portal. And it's interesting because we are seeing high level names kind of flying off the board, and guys going here and going there. And certainly to this point, Ohio State landing Gabe Cupps from Indiana, Christoph Tilley from Santa Clara, and now Brandon Noel from Wright State. I don't know that any of those names really pop from a national standpoint, and I don't know where Ohio State ultimately is going to finish when it comes to the transfer portal recruiting rankings. But I do know they finished pretty highly last year, and that really did not work out very well. And so it does seem pretty clear to me that the Buckeyes have been a little more selective this year and tried to target guys who really can fit the pre-existing players who are coming back and are expected to take on big roles this year. And one of those certainly is Devin Royal. And you look at some of the numbers, it's almost easy to forget how little his production, like how little production he actually had as a freshman, and how buried he was on the bench for a good while there. It wasn't until Holtman was fired and Diebler took over that he started to play more consistently, and we saw the uptick in the scoring in the last 9 games of the season. He averaged about 8 points a game, but he finished the year at 4.7 points and 2.4 rebounds. He played in 33 of Ohio State's games, averaged 11.2 minutes. So there were 3 games where he just straight up didn't even get off the bench, but clearly picked things up late. And then it was not really, and Jake has talked about this at various times throughout the season. It was not the off season that Devin. It wasn't the best off season. He had some struggles. I think there was a little bit of like, okay, we want you to develop more on the perimeter, but also don't forget like what made you good. And fall camp, my understanding, was a different story. And I know I wrote about this at some point during the season that like there were some really honest and heartfelt conversations about like how the summer had gone and then what they needed from him in the fall. And then they got it. And then you saw what he can be. I mean, you got 13.7 points, 6.9 rebounds, team high, team leading rebounder, I should say. After going 3 of 20 from 3 as a freshman, 16 of 58 from 3. That's 27.6%. Clearly, that number will need to continue to climb based on the role that he's likely going to play this year. But a guy whose minutes nearly tripled and most of his numbers fell right in line. Devin Royal is a potential all Big Ten player next year. And to keep him in the fold for a third year and to keep another critical part of this roster intact, this is the retention Ohio State did not have last year. And some of that ultimately became self-inflicted with bringing in Aaron Bradshaw and losing Felix Okpara. And I guess that's the self-inflicted part. I mean, they weren't trying to not keep Roddy Gale, and they pushed really hard to keep Roddy Gale. But keeping this group of guys together is not really something we've seen from Ohio State here in a bit. So the Buckeyes will return their 3 leading scorers who are eligible to return. It's been a while since that's happened. Last time Ohio State brought back its 2 leading scorers was 2016-17 when Jaquan Lyle, Mark Loving, and Jayshawn Tate all returned after finishing as the top 3 scorers the season before. So we are talking about going on a decade since Ohio State brought back its 2 leading scorers, much less its, and also it's 3 of its top scorers like this. It's so hard to sort of qualify that. I mean, Micah Parrish finished 3rd on the team in scoring, and he can't return, and John Mobley was 4th. So 3 of the top 4, not exactly apples to apples there with Ohio State bringing back all 3 of its top scorers from 15-16 to 16-17. And clearly that didn't lead to success. Those 2 teams went from missing the tournament, playing in the NIT, to missing the entire NIT entirely, and Thad Matta getting fired. So I hear that returning production does not guarantee that you're going to have a better season, because we have examples right here. But I think where I would counter that right now is that who are you taking? If you have a choice of Lyle, Loving, and Tate, or Thornton, Mobley, and Royal, I mean, I think the answer is pretty obvious. And Jayshawn Tate's an NBA player and one of the best to play in Ohio State here in the last 15 years. And certainly was a critical part, but those other guys left some stuff to be desired. And we'll ultimately see what kind of steps Devin and John can take this year as they solidify in significant roles. They're both going to play big roles coming into the season, but certainly those changed once Bradshaw got suspended, and then Devin moved into the starting lineup and never left it. And then when Michi left the team and Mobley moved in the starting lineup and remained there, he was pushing for a starting spot and probably would have gotten there, maybe in that next game, even if Michi had stayed. But those are 2 guys that ended the year playing more of a role than was expected at the beginning of the year. And now they will go into next year expected to play a bigger role and maintain that bigger role. And when you look at some of the numbers, with just those three, that's 44.4 points per game and 46.4% of Ohio State's average minutes played per game. So that's just with those three. And some of that is, those are their three of their four primary offensive weapons. Certainly that's gonna impact that. Well, and the other thing, let's add in Sean Stewart. You're up to 50.1 points, 17.6 rebounds, and 55.6% of the minutes played just in those three. So Ohio State might ultimately end up with its highest percentage of returning minutes. Since the 2019-2020 season, that team returned 59.7% of its minutes. And it is easy to forget about that team, and I think a lot of times people do, because that team did not get an NCAA tournament, but that team was top 20 in offensive and defensive efficiency. That was the most balanced Chris Holtmann team. And had that team had an NCAA tournament, the numbers would tell you, and the way that team closed the season and the way Chris Holtmann was coaching at that point, like the numbers would tell you that team was going to make a second weekend. We'll never know. The numbers also tell us that Dayton was going to win the title. Again, we'll never know. But retaining important pieces, especially in this era, can go a long way. And starting next year, the sport is going to get younger again. We will see the average age skew back toward what we are more accustomed to, because essentially everybody will be out of that extra COVID year. Now, Brandon Noel is not. He's an exception to that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Ohio State's going to have a senior guard, a junior forward, and a sophomore guard who have all proven they can score at a high level in the Big Ten, all returning. And I think that all informs that this is a program that then didn't go out, at least to this point, and bring in anything other than pieces that complement those pieces. And I think add to the depth, and I think will help push guys. But I don't see a whole lot of redundancy at this point, I suppose. Maybe that's a word for it. Some of the way too early preseason rankings have taken note. ESPN has Ohio State 23rd and The Athletic 24th. Now we can all agree that trying to project preseason rankings the day after the NCAA tournament when there's more than 2,400 players in the transfer portal is madness. I mean, nobody's made NBA decisions like, what if Bruce Thornton's draft process results in he catches enough eyes and he's a first round pick and he's gone? Then obviously that's going to change things significantly. But, right now, I think we're looking at an Ohio State team where you can realistically expect the guys that are still on this roster to be there. Royal, Thornton, Mobley, Stewart, White, Yagovin, Chapman. Who am I forgetting? I feel like I'm probably leaving somebody off that list. Royal, White, Yagovin, Stewart. Nope, that's everybody. Thornton, Mobley. Yeah, that covers everybody. And then you start factoring in the freshmen and all that. We'll see. But not just retaining bodies, but retaining high-level bodies who have put up high-level minutes. We'll be able to look at this a year from now and say, was that the right decision or not? But Ohio State clearly put the emphasis on that. And now we'll see if that, again, was that the right decision? But to go back to a point I made on a previous podcast, I do think that any one of those guys would have been highly prized in the transfer portal. And I do think that landing them goes a bit under the radar, but is equally impactful to signing a guy who will come in and have to hit the ground running and may or may not mesh with your culture and with your program and with the rest of the roster. I think they should be able to skirt some of that as they head into the summer and get this roster all together. So that now leads us into Brandon Noel. And rather than read you a whole bunch of quotes, I asked when we got done with our interview, and he said he didn't mind if I replayed it on the podcast. So we'll get to that here in just a second. He is a sixth-year player who did sit out his first 2 years at Wright State. And I don't want to give too much of this away here on the pod, but he's a 6'8", 240-pound forward who is a career 15.5 point per game scorer at Wright State, two-time All-Horizon League. He was a Rookie of the Year and on the All-Freshman team in 2022, 2023. So 15.5 points, 8.1 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 37.3% career three-point shooter. he's done individually about everything that you can do at that level. And we do talk about the 2 redshirt years leading in and the impact that had on things. But he is a veteran dude who has, the some of the first responses that I got were people asking, well, it didn't work for Tanner Holden. Why is it going to work for Brandon Noel? And we'll see. But I think different bodies, different skill sets, different experience levels, and different situation where, to me, he talks a little bit about his fit and about, kind of what this year at Ohio State will look like, from talking to people who are around the program, who know him, have watched him, maybe helped recruit him. Words that keep coming back to me: skill, toughness, and experience. Those are 3 words that have been emphasized to me a couple of times. And so I don't see a universe where Ohio State is expecting him to come in and put up Wright State numbers. But if he is capable of holding down a role and accepting it and doing all the things that Ohio State needs him to do, presumably off the bench, that adds to this mix. He's a guy that I feel like, between Royal at the 3, Stewart at the 4, Noel at the 4, Tilley at the 5, possibly Stewart at the 5 in like a small man situation with maybe Stewart at the 5 and Noel at the 4 and Royal at the 3, or Royal at the 4 and playing 3 guard. Like there's some different stuff there that I think makes a little bit more sense and could be a little bit more impactful than what we saw when Ohio State suddenly had to go to its 7th or 8th player in the rotation, and things would dip pretty quickly at one end of the court or the other, or at times both. So let's go ahead and listen to this interview here, and then I'll share a few more thoughts before we wrap this up. So here is Brandon Noel. What was it about Ohio State that it made this the right fit for you?
As I got to know the staff, I really felt like they have a good vision for Ohio State basketball moving forward. I really believe in the players they have there, the players they're going to bring in, and the coaches that are already there to win games next year.
How long did it take for you to start to feel that in your conversations with them? Because I know these transfer recruitments can move pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's the thing. They go pretty quickly. The first time we talked, more just like a brief introduction, just to kind of get to know me a little bit, get to know them, see if things make sense. And then if it does, then usually it moved pretty quickly into the basketball side of things and trying to figure out that part. It did not take long. Once I first met, talked to the assistant coaches first, which was good. And then once I talked to Coach Diebler, he got to more of the specifics of some of the basketball goals and that side of thing. And from the first conversation, I knew that was a very doable thing and something I'd like to be a part of.
So what was it about the way that all the basketball stuff you just mentioned there, what is it about all that you like and that you think that makes it a good fit?
One of the biggest things is the retention they have among their players. They have a lot of good players coming back from last year's team. And then just the ability to, grow off that, and me being able to try and come in and help add to that is something that I was looking forward to doing.
How have they explained what your role looks like, and how do you think your skills fit into how they want to play?
The role thing is complicated because no one is going to promise anyone anything.
Sure.
So there's no promises here, but it was just basically that they, looking to add some size to the team, looking to add some shooting ability, and that's something that I think I can bring to both of those, and rebounding as well, and I think I can do that as well. So just some of their needs and some of the things I can do, I believe, lined up. So,
did you have any familiarity with the Ohio State coaching staff before? I mean, I know obviously as an Ohio kid, maybe there was some overlap there from years ago, but was there any common ground there when they first reached out this time?
I actually no prior relationships with any of the guys on staff. No.
Okay. And which coach first reached out to you?
Coach Simons.
Okay. He's a fun guy. I've enjoyed getting to know him.
That's a good guy for sure.
So growing up an Ohio kid, and I'm sure you will probably talk about this a lot in the next year and a half or so, but did Ohio State mean anything special to you growing up? Did that factor into this decision at all?
A little bit. Yeah, I was always a fan growing up. I went to a lot of the camps when I was younger, the week-long camps.
Oh, sure.
I probably went through 3 or 4 years of those at least. So I was always there and up around Columbus. And I have a lot of family in Columbus, so I've been to games when I was younger. I haven't been to one since I was in high school. For obvious reasons, I've been in other college the whole time since then. But, I was always a fan growing up, and it was cool to, watch and be a part of, watch of those teams and stuff that were, awesome back in the day.
Did you have any favorite players growing up or anything like that?
I had a few, but it's probably too hard to just single out a couple.
That's fair. What was your recruitment like out of high school? And how did that compare to what this recruitment here in the transfer portal was like?
It was very different. In high school, I only had one Division I offer, and 5 or 6 Division II offers. I heard from a couple other Division I schools. Nothing ever got too serious and no offers were given. But like I said, I had one Division I offer out of high school. This time around was a lot different. I had a lot more interest from larger Division I schools, including Ohio State and some other Big Ten schools, a couple ACC schools, a couple Big 12, things like that. So it was a lot different. Had a lot more options per se. Yeah. But I think this is the best one for me.
And then trying to do like some quick background on you here the last day or two, but the 2 redshirt years to start off at Wright State, was that like a medical and then just get to acclimate like a typical redshirt, or like what went into those first 2 years there?
Yeah, so my first one was a medical. I tore my ACL in the fall, in September. So that was that year. And the second year, I didn't get cleared until, mid to late summer that next year. Okay. So really it was to get acclimated. I hadn't really carved myself out a role, and I wasn't really going to play that much. So it was almost a little bit of waste. So I ended up redshirting, like you said, the typical redshirt. So yeah, you hit it pretty spot on there. Okay.
So then you immediately kind of hit the ground running then, and it just continued to progress each year. Where do you think your game has grown in those 3 years? And what do you think, you touched on this a little bit with like your size and your shooting, but what do you think you bring to Ohio State that you developed these last 3 years?
I feel like I just developed more of a skill set, trying to be able to shoot it, pass it, dribble, just trying to be versatile. I think that's probably the biggest skill set that I can probably offer, as well as rebounding and trying to play a pretty good defense. So that's one thing. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I want to bring those things here, trying to be versatile, shoot it, drive it, pass it, and basically just try and do a lot of things. Not too much specific stuff, but like rebounding and defense would be something also. So really just trying to help this team win however I can. It'll be what I do. Okay.
And you mentioned like the retention of their players was something that intrigued you and helped make Ohio State an attractable option for you. What do you see there as far as like that returning group that looks set to be playing with you next season?
I mean, these returning players, the returning 2 guards are, Bruce and Junior, great players, Devin as well. So just the ability to come in and build to something that's already there. Rather than starting from scratch. Like they're going to have a foundation of great players and great basketball. So it's just something to try and add to and help get better. I don't have to start from scratch or try and build anything from it that's already there.
Jake likes aggressive, tough, physical players and like guys that play with a bit of an edge. And is that something that is, did you feel some common ground in getting to know Jake throughout the recruitment?
I did, yeah. That edge you speak of it is something that I've tried to play with for years here at Wright State, and that's something I want to continue. And like you said, it's already there. He preaches that to his guys, and he has it in himself. So that's something I just, again, want to continue to try and build on and help them add to.
Okay. Well, and then last question for you, just when Ohio State fans get to see you and when they get to know you a little bit, like what do you hope that they take from, or what do you hope that they get to know about you in your game and kind of what you're about as you join the program?
First and foremost is that I'm going to, give it everything I have to try and win games. And second, that I care about the program and trying to represent all that it means to the fans.
All right. So a couple of things that stood out to me in that conversation was that it was important to him to be going somewhere that was retaining players and that he could help. There's a foundation set and he can help that foundation take another step. And I thought that was interesting, because if you are going into a situation and saying, I want this to be about me and it's my senior year and I want X number of shots and I want this and that, that's probably not the situation you go into. That's not what you're looking for, or the type of fit you're looking for, if those are your priorities. And I thought he offered that up pretty early on, that was important to him, that Ohio State has a solid nucleus returning, and he's excited to fitting his skills in with that group. I kind of fumbled over a question later in the interview where, like, when I talked to Brooke Cupps, Gabe Cupps' dad, he talked about how, like, he described his son as a bit of an acquired taste because of how hard he plays, and just like his mindset and his mentality and all those things. And when Jake Diebler talks about, like, playing the way that he wants his team to play, and like playing with the passion and the aggression and all those things, like, Brandon had said some of the same stuff, that, like, there is some commonality there between the way that Diebler sees the game and approaches the game, and the way that he tries to approach the game and play the game as well. So that's a thing. I think about this roster and about this team. And, I think we saw that at times, like when Ohio State shook off the losing streak and won at Purdue, and then, like, put together some pretty good ball there for what was that, like 2-3 weeks before things then started to go sideways again. Like, you would look out there and you think, like, man, this team probably needs a little bit more talent, but they're playing together. There was an element of toughness there. It was not sustained for the entire season. I'm wondering if guys like Cupps and Noel and their returning players, like, I've got to think those things all kind of fit in that regard. And yeah, he's older than most guys are going to be next season. He had 2 red shirts plus this COVID year, so sat out 2 years, played 3 years, and now he'll play this year. So I'm sure that'll come up in a few ways throughout the season, because that'll be worth looking at. And I'm looking to see real quick if I can find, like, a birthday and exactly how old he is. Huh. It says that he was, born January 1st, 2001. Okay. So he is 24, and he will turn 25 mid-season next year. So New Year's Day birthday. That's kind of neat. I wish I should have done my research in advance. Was that accurate, though? That seems... All right, scratch that. That was on, like, a Pro Ballers website. I'm guessing that was just a default date. Wright State has his birthday. They tweeted him happy birthday on March 20th. So don't know how many years. At any rate, he will be presumably the oldest player on the roster. He has not played a whole lot against higher level competition. And I had somebody mention that they enjoyed in the last podcast pointing out some of Tilly's stats in those types of games. And so I did pull up, I've got KenPom pulled up here to look at. You go through Brandon Noel's career, and he has played 92 games for Wright State. He's only played 2 games against Tier A opponents, and both of those were season openers. This past year, Wright State opened the season at Kentucky, and the year before that, Wright State opened the season at Colorado State. Now, both those games were lopsided losses, and in those 2 games, he's a combined 9 for 16 from 2 and 2 of 9 from 3, so that's 22.2%. And doesn't have a ton of experience against Tier A and B teams either. When you add those up, he's got 12 games against teams at that level, and he's a 49.5% shooter from the floor and 31.6 from 3, 12 of 38. So both of those numbers are definitely lower than his career numbers of 61.5% from 2, 37.6% from 3. So that would indicate that there's probably an adjustment period coming, you would think. And I think what can help in that regard is the fact that, like, I'm just pulling up, like, Tanner Holden right here, and Tanner Holden was 6'6", $185, and Noel is 6'8", 240. So there's some more size there, and I think that's just at least a starting point when it comes to playing in the league. And so we'll see. But I thought there was some good stuff in that interview, and I thought, might as well just play the whole thing. Hopefully you enjoy that. What comes next? I don't know if there's a specific position that Ohio State is currently targeting. I do think that they're going to take one more player in the portal. My guess is that it's someone that can add some shooting. I still would not be opposed to seeing Ohio State add another big, just like get a 7. Well, whatever. Get a 6'11", 260 guy who can combat the Morez Johnsons and the like going through the Big Ten. And just if you need to throw a big body in for 8 to 10 minutes a game, you can do that. Or if Tilly gets in foul trouble or Yagovin isn't ready yet, like it might not be the worst idea to have another body in there ready to fit into the mix. I have gotten a few questions about John Camden from Delaware. My understanding is that Ohio State was either going to take Noel or Camden and went with Noel, but this is all fluid stuff. And if someone were to leave who's currently projected to stay, like who knows? I mean, this stuff, like the roster or the transfer portal closes on the 22nd. And I think we won't have a great idea until that point of like, okay, who is actually in and who is anybody, we thought we knew for sure last year. And then like Felix Okpara leaves. And I say all that to say, like, I think we probably do need to just like keep that as a possibility in our minds that like the addition of someone could always mean the subtraction of someone else. But I do think as we sit here on April 8th, the players who I mentioned all before, and these 3 transfers and the 2 incoming freshmen, like that, there's a real high level of confidence that nothing is deviating from that group. So now we'll see what happens with what would seem to be one more spot that they have to try to address the roster via the portal. I've got 3 quick portal random updates that I think are probably of note to Ohio State fans. The first is Dylan Mitchell is in the portal, leaving Cincinnati. So he started his career at Texas, transferred to Cincinnati, now is transferring again. You, of course, remember Dylan Mitchell because he committed to Ohio State and was all set to make his announcement. And they were waiting on him to publish a video showing his commitment. And somebody made a fake video and posted it. And for about 5 minutes, I had a story, or not even that long, about a minute, I had a story up that said Dylan Mitchell has committed because that was the sign that we were all watching for. But then it was a fake video. So I pulled the story down. And by that point, he had already decommitted from Ohio State privately and ultimately then signed with Texas. But yes, one-time Ohio State signee Dylan Mitchell, or not signee, good Lord. One-time Ohio State commitment, Dylan Mitchell. It's late, people. I'm sorry. It's actually not that late. I'm just tired. Dylan Mitchell, one-time Ohio State verbal silent commitment, is now in the transfer portal again. Another name you might recognize is Jaden Quaintance, who is a Cleveland native and someone that had significantly considered Ohio State during his recruitment process. Reclassified, graduated a year early, big dude, went to Arizona State and played a year there, was like all conference on the all defensive team, had a really strong freshman season, has to play another year of college ball because he's still that young, but is also coming off a torn ACL. There were a couple of reports linking Ohio State to Jaden, but he has committed to Kentucky, so you can cross him off then. And Jalen Washington from North Carolina, who had visited Ohio State last week or a week and a half ago, has committed to Vanderbilt. So he's off the list there as well. So that's all I've got for this one. Things I'm sure will change here very shortly. I do want to tell you to keep your eye out. I have a story coming about someone who was on the team last year, but who will not be on the team next year, and whose name I haven't mentioned on the podcast yet, but had a long conversation with this person earlier today, and I'm going to start writing that on Wednesday. Hopefully you'll see that by Thursday or Friday. I won't be shy about posting it once it's out there, so just keep your eyes peeled for that. And now I'm going to go to bed. With the season being over, I think we can actually realistically maybe try to string together a couple nights of decent sleep. The puppy's starting to figure out the puppy bed, so that's helped. I'm going to go get some sleep and get back to the writing in the morning. So as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardy@dispatch.com. Thanks again for listening, and thanks to Patrick Flaherty for making this all work. I'll be back with you soon. I'm going to reach out to Dave L. and try to get him on here shortly, so look for that as well. We'll be in touch soon, so until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.